Welcome back to Morning Joe. It is 27 past the hour. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says Alabama's new abortion law goes too far, but declined to say whether it should be overturned. As Republicans navigate the growing backlash over the nation's strictest abortion legislation, here's what he had to say.
Do you think that law goes too far?
It goes further than I believe, yes. I defend my pro-life position for my whole political career. But in my whole political career, I also believed in rape, incest, or life of the mother. There was exceptions. That's exactly what Republicans have voted on in this House. That's what our platform says. And I believe that's the point of what you find many of us of where we stand.
The distancing comes as the National Party struggles to make inroads with suburban women before their 2020 re-election campaigns, while state Republicans move to remove the rape and incest exceptions from their increasingly stringent anti-abortion bills to push the issue before the Supreme Court.
So, Gene, fools rush in.
Yeah.
They overreach. Yeah, I know a lot of Democrats were concerned when New York State passed abortion bills that I think 15% of Americans supported. Now, Republicans have snatched, as they often do, they have snatched defeat out of the jaws of political victory and have gone the other way. And their extremism is scaring the hell out of a lot of Americans who might even be pro-life, and those educated suburban Republican women that started to move away from the Republican Party in 18. They're in a full-out sprint now.
Yeah, I think that's all this law is ever going to accomplish. Actually, is in the political sense to hurt Republicans and to drive those women and men away from an extremist law that is, the anti-abortion forces, and I don't support them, but they had been doing well with an incremental approach to try to restrict abortion. How many weeks and this and that. They have been doing well with that. This so far overreaches. I'm not convinced it will ever get to the Supreme Court. I think it'll be immediately enjoined, immediately struck down, struck down at the appeals level, and I don't think the Supreme Court wants to hear this case. This is a bad case. I don't think they will want to take it up. But meanwhile, it's there on the books, and Republicans are going to have to answer questions about it, and they're going to have to say where they stand on it, and it's going to hurt them.
The Supreme Court, after it's overturned, will deny cert. They won't listen to it. The only thing this Alabama law will do is set back the pro-life issue for years. And my gosh, Planned Parenthood will raise so much money. Let's wait a week and see how much Planned Parenthood makes off of this extremist move. Heidi, the Bulwark called this virtue signaling. We're used to accusing liberals of virtue signaling. This was pure virtue signaling by conservatives, and they're going to pay for it.
Joe, I looked into the polling here to just demonstrate just how unpopular this is. Even among evangelicals, this doesn't crack 30% support. Evangelicals. And what you're seeing now is all of these news stories coming out about 11 and 12-year-olds who've been raped, and their little bodies weren't made to do this. That is what's splashed across the country. And to your point about this being only political, if you're a Republican in Montana, California, or Massachusetts, you're still going to get labeled as being part of a party that pushed this forward. And secondly, I think it's going to give Democrats an opportunity to open a bigger dialogue about what is pro-life, because is pro-life forcing a law like this onto women and at the same time based on my own reporting, cutting funding for programs, for instance, that help prevent, that are scientifically proven to help prevent teenage pregnancy, cutting nutritional assistance to mothers and children, cutting Medicaid, which we know
babies that are born
helps babies and single mothers. And so it really will allow Democrats, I think, to start to make that argument about morals and what really is pro-life and what really is supportive of mothers and children.
I think Kevin McCarthy speaks for a lot of pro-lifers in this country, and you can see the frustration written all over his face as he answered that question, which is that they have a principled belief that abortion, generally speaking, is wrong and that a viable baby should not be terminated. And so when they hear this most extreme example of how abortion could be used, I mean, think again specifically about what they're saying. An uncle, a father rapes you, you must deliver the baby. A stranger rapes you, you must deliver your attacker's baby.
You're 12, you're pregnant.
What could be more barbaric and appalling and repulsive than those scenarios? And now, of course, because of the politics we live in, that example will be lifted up as representative of the anti-abortion movement in the country.
And think about this. Think about this. You know, Mika said before, Alabama's not a swing state, and it's usually not a swing state. I should know. As Elton John would say, I've been there enough. Spent a lot of time in Alabama. Doug Jones won against a guy who was attacked for preying on young 14-year-old girls. He denied it, but that was the attack. So, Donnie, add that, if Roy Moore runs again, add that on top of a bill that allows an older man to rape a 14-year-old girl, and she has to deliver the baby. That is very bad, even for Alabama Republicans.
For everywhere. What won Trump the election, when won the Republican elections in 2016, was passion. They had the passion. You want to turbocharge passion on the Democratic side? There is no better way. You put this together with the passion of anti-Trump.
This is what the Women's March warned us would happen. And frankly, a lot of more middle ground, moderate Republican women laughed at that. Well, now they're seeing that here we are.
You look at in 20, you look at North Carolina, you look at Virginia, you look at Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, you look at these swing states, you look at parts of Florida, which is really a Trump state right now. But there are a lot of these states, swing states, Iowa, where this is not good for Republican prospects.
He's only
in
52% of white women at this point before this.
Coming up, we've seen several examples in recent months where the President of the United States was ignored by his closest advisors. Now, with a looming threat of war with Iran, who exactly is calling the shots? That conversation is next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.